I didn't scream. That's the part that still haunts me. When you imagine catching your husband in bed with someone, you picture yourself breaking down, throwing things, losing control. But when I pushed open that bedroom door and saw my husband, the man I'd loved for 6 years, tangled in sheets with my stepmother, the woman who'd raised me since I was 12, I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, phone in hand, the screen still glowing with my father's text. "Working late again, sweetheart. Don't wait up." The afternoon light was streaming through the curtains, those expensive cream curtains Linda had insisted we buy for the guest room. The room smelled like her perfume, that cloying floral scent she wore too much of. And there they were, his hand on her hip, her hair, dyed blonde, always perfectly styled, spread across the pillow like she owned the place. Which I suppose she thought she did. Michael saw me first. His eyes went wide, and for a fraction of a second, I saw something that almost looked like relief, like he'd been waiting for this moment, like the secret had been too heavy to carry any longer. Linda turned her head slowly, almost lazily, and when her eyes met mine, she didn't look shocked. She looked annoyed. "Emily," she said, pulling the sheet up over her chest with the kind of dignity you'd use greeting an unexpected guest at a dinner party. "We need to talk." I closed the door, not slammed it. Closed it, gently. The soft click of the latch settling into place was the loudest sound in the universe. Then I walked down the stairs, got into my car, and drove to the coffee shop 3 blocks away. I ordered a latte. I sat by the window and watched people walk by, living their normal lives, completely unaware that mine had just imploded. And I started planning. Let me tell you something about betrayal. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a slow leak in your ceiling. Drip, drip, drip. And by the time you notice the water stain, the rot has already spread through the beams. I should have seen it earlier. My name is Emily Chen, and I'm 32 years old. I'm a librarian at the downtown branch, the kind of person people describe as sweet and quiet. I wear cardigans. I read before bed. I'm the person strangers ask for directions because I have that trustworthy face. Michael was my college sweetheart. We met in a poetry class sophomore year. Yes, I know how cliché that sounds. And he was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, charming, ambitious. He worked in finance, made good money, and when he proposed on a beach in Maui, I cried happy tears. My father cried at our wedding. Robert Chen, the man who'd raised me alone from age 7 after my mother died, walking me down the aisle with tears streaming down his weathered face. He'd worked himself to the bone his entire life, first as a line cook, then saving enough to open his own small restaurant. He'd never remarried, never even dated, until he met Linda at a charity event when I was 12. Linda Chen, formerly Linda Morrison. 48 years old, blonde, beautiful in that sharp, maintained way that requires expensive moisturizers and regular salon appointments. She'd been a pharmaceutical sales rep, always impeccably dressed, always knowing exactly what to say. She'd swept into our lives like a hurricane of competence and femininity, and I'd loved her for it. See, I'd spent so much of my childhood trying to be both daughter and homemaker for my grieving father. I'd learned to cook his favorite meals at age 9. I'd picked out my own clothes for school. I'd forged his signature on permission slips because he was working double shifts. When Linda came along, she took care of him. She took care of us. She helped me pick out my prom dress. She taught me how to do my makeup. She came to my college graduation when Dad had to work. She even helped plan my wedding, spending hours with me looking at flower arrangements and seating charts. "You're like the daughter I never had," she'd told me once, squeezing my hand across a table covered in wedding invitations. I'd believed her. Michael and Linda had always gotten along well. She charmed everyone. That was her gift. At family dinners, she'd laugh at his jokes, ask about his work, remember the names of his colleagues. Dad would beam with pride, so happy his 2 favorite people were close. "You're so lucky to have such a wonderful stepmother," Michael had said to me more than once. I'd agreed. The first trip happened 6 months ago. Michael had been distant, not dramatically so, just the kind of slow fade you attribute to work stress. He'd come home later. He'd scroll through his phone at dinner. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? I'll be out of town Thursday. Can you pick up my dry cleaning? The sex stopped, but that felt almost natural after 6 years of marriage. We were comfortable, settled. That's what I told myself. The second drip came 3 months ago when I noticed Linda texting constantly during family dinners. She'd laugh at something on her screen, then quickly put the phone face down. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile that perfect smile. Just work drama, she'd say. But she'd retired from pharmaceutical sales 2 years earlier. The third drip, the one that should have woken me up, happened last month. I'd come home early from work with a migraine and found Michael in our study, on the phone, speaking in that low, intimate voice he used to use with me. I can't wait to see you, he was saying. I know, soon. When he saw me in the doorway, he didn't even flinch. Hey, babe. Yeah, Mom, I gotta go. Emily's home. Love you too. He hung up and smiled at me. My mom says hi. His mother had been dead for 4 years. I'd stood there head pounding and said nothing, because saying something meant facing something, and I wasn't. Ready? So I'd smiled back, taken some Advil, and went to lie down. That's the thing about betrayal. We're complicit in it. We see the cracks forming and we choose to look away because the alternative, the truth, is too terrible to face. But standing in that coffee shop, latte growing cold in my hands, I couldn't look away anymore. My phone buzzed. Michael. Emily, where are you? We need to talk. I didn't respond. Another buzz. Linda this time. Sweetheart, I know you're upset, but this isn't what it looks like. Please come home so we can explain. Explain. As if there was an explanation for being naked in bed with your stepdaughter's husband while your own husband was working to pay for the house you were defiling. My father. God, my father. He'd given Linda everything. After years of being alone, of sacrificing, of struggling, he'd finally found happiness. He'd sold his restaurant last year, taking a loss because the neighborhood had changed, and Linda had convinced him to invest the money with Michael's firm. Keep it in the family, she'd said. Michael had promised exceptional returns. I wondered, sitting there in that coffee shop, how long it had been going on. Months? Years? Had they laughed about it? Had they been sleeping together while planning my wedding? Had Linda helped me pick out lingerie for my honeymoon while already knowing what my husband looked like naked? The rage started then. Not hot and explosive, but cold and calculating. It spread through my veins like ice water, crystallizing every thought into sharp, clear focus. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront them in some dramatic scene where they could manipulate me with apologies and excuses. I was going to burn their entire world down, brick by brick, and I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what they'd done. But first, I needed proof, and I needed to protect my father. I went to a library, not mine. Too risky running into someone I knew. I drove 20 minutes to the branch in Riverside and logged into a public computer. First, I created a new email address. Then I started researching. Private investigators, divorce lawyers, financial forensic accountants. I opened a new bank account at a different bank. One Michael didn't know about. I had some money saved from before our marriage, inheritance from my mother that I'd kept separate. It wasn't much, about $30,000. But it was mine, and it was hidden. I contacted 3 lawyers, setting up consultations for the following week. I needed to know my rights, my options, the best way to disentangle myself from Michael financially while ensuring he didn't walk away with half of everything. Then I did something that surprised even me. I went to an electronics store and bought a voice-activated recorder, the kind small enough to hide anywhere. I bought 3. The young clerk who rang me up didn't ask questions, probably assumed I was a paranoid spouse. He was right, but I wasn't paranoid. I was justified. When I finally went home, it was after 8. The house was dark except for the living room lamp. Michael was sitting on the couch, head in his hands. Linda was nowhere to be seen. He looked up when I walked in, his eyes red. Emmy, thank God, I've been so worried. Emmy. He only called me that when he wanted something. Where's Linda? I asked, my voice flat. She went home. Emily, please sit down. Let me explain. I sat in the armchair across from him, crossing my legs, folding my hands in my lap, the picture of composure. Okay, I said. Explain. He took a deep breath. And then he did what cheaters always do. He tried to make it my fault. We've been distant lately, he started. You've been so busy with work, and I've been stressed with the new accounts. And Linda, she was just there. She understood. It just happened. How long? Emily. How long? He looked at his hands. 4 months. 4 months. That meant it started right after Dad's birthday party, the one Linda had insisted on throwing at our house. She'd stayed late to help clean up. Michael had driven her home. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I didn't let it show on my face. Are you in love with her? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I don't know, he finally said. I'm confused. This whole thing it's complicated. Complicated. The affair between my husband and my stepmother was complicated. Does my father know? God, no! Emily, please, you can't tell him. It would destroy him. There it was. Not, I'm sorry, not, I'll end it. Just, don't tell your father because it would be inconvenient for us. Where do you want this to go, Michael? I asked, still calm, still composed. He looked up, surprised by the question. Maybe he'd expected tears, hysteria. I don't know. I love you, Emily, I do, but I also have feelings for Linda. I need time to figure this out. Time to figure it out. Like he was choosing between job offers. Okay, I said, standing up. Take all the time you need. I walked to the guest room, the one where I'd found them, and closed the door. I could hear him calling my name, but I didn't respond. I lay down on the bed, on those expensive cream sheets that still smelled like Linda's perfume, and I stared at the ceiling. And I planned. The first recorder went into Michael's car, tucked into the side pocket of the driver's door. The second went into his office at home, hidden behind a row of books he never read. The third went into my purse, ready to be placed wherever opportunity arose. I played the perfect wife. I made his coffee in the morning. I kissed him goodbye. I asked about his day. I smiled. But every night I'd listen to the recordings. The first real conversation I caught was 3 days later. Michael in his car calling Linda. She's acting weird, too calm. I don't trust it. Linda's voice, tinny through the recorder. She's in shock, baby. Give her time. She'll either accept it or she won't, but either way, we need to be smart about this. What if she tells Robert? A pause. Then, she won't. Emily's too sweet, too concerned about everyone else's feelings. That's always been her problem. She'll suffer in silence to protect her daddy. They laughed. Both of them. At me, at my predictability. I sat in my car in the library parking lot, listening to this, and I felt the last fragment of love for Michael crystallize into something harder than diamond. They thought I was weak. They thought I was predictable. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The lawyer's name was Patricia Zhao, and she looked like she ate cheating husbands for breakfast. Mid-50s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her office filled with framed case victories. So, she said, leaning back in her leather chair, your husband is having an affair with your stepmother. Yes. And you have recordings of them discussing the affair? Yes. And you want a divorce that protects your assets and ensures he gets nothing. I want more than that, I said quietly. I want him exposed. I want everyone to know what they did. Patricia studied me over her reading glasses. Revenge divorces tend to be expensive and emotionally draining. Are you sure that's the path you want to take? I'm not looking for revenge, I said. I'm looking for justice. There's a difference. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. All right, let's talk strategy. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I went through the motions, work, dinner, sleep, while building my case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. The recordings were gold. Michael and Linda were careless, emboldened by their assumption that I was too timid to act. They discussed their plans, how they'd wait until after the holidays to tell Dad, how they'd position it as two people who fell in love unexpectedly, how they'd minimize the damage. Emily will be fine, Linda said in one recording. She's resilient. She'll find someone else eventually, someone more suited to her, more suited to me, meaning boring, meaning forgettable. But the recordings gave me more than just proof of the affair. They gave me something else, information about Michael's business. In one conversation, Michael mentioned being worried about the Henderson account. In another, he talked about creative accounting to hide losses from a bad investment. Linda had suggested he move some funds around before the quarterly review. I'd passed this information along to Patricia, who'd brought in a forensic accountant. Within a week, we'd uncovered evidence that Michael had been cooking his books, inflating returns to attract more investors, and hiding substantial losses. "This is fraud," the accountant told me, his expression grim. "Securities fraud. If this gets out, he could face criminal charges." "What about my father's investment?" I asked. He checked his notes. "Your father invested $300,000 6 months ago. According to these records, the actual value of his investment is closer to $150,000. Michael's been sending him false statements showing growth that doesn't exist." My father had lost half his life savings to my husband's fraud. The ice in my veins spread further. I needed one more piece of the puzzle, confrontation without warning. I waited until the weekend. Dad had invited us over for Sunday dinner, a tradition Linda had started years ago. Family time, she always called it. This Sunday would be different. I arrived early, before Michael, carrying a laptop and a folder full of printed documents. Dad was in the kitchen, wearing his favorite apron, the one that said "Kiss the Cook" that I'd given him for Father's Day years ago. "Emily," he hugged me, smelling like garlic and soy sauce. "You're early. Michael not with you?" "He'll be here soon. Dad, can we talk before everyone arrives?" Something in my voice made him turn off the stove. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I'd practiced this speech 100 times, but sitting at his kitchen table, looking at his kind, weathered face, the words stuck in my throat. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and it's going to hurt. I'm so sorry." His expression shifted to concern. "Are you sick?" "Emily, what is it?" "I'm not sick. But Dad, Michael and Linda are having an affair." The silence that followed was suffocating. He stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "That's not funny, Emily." "I know it's not. I wish I was joking." I opened the laptop and pulled up the audio files. I have recordings, I have evidence, and Dad, there's more. Michael has been defrauding his investors, including you. Your investment? You've lost over $150,000. I watched my father age 10 years in 10 seconds. His hand shook as he reached for the laptop. "No," he said softly. "No, Emily, there must be a mistake. Linda wouldn't. She loves me. We're happy." I thought Michael loved me too. I thought we were happy. "Listen to the recordings, Dad, please." He did. I watched him listen to his wife and his son-in-law discussing their affair, laughing about deceiving us, planning their future together. When the recording ended, he sat very still, too still. "Dad, how long have you known?" His voice was barely a whisper. 2 weeks. I wanted to gather evidence first. I wanted to make sure I had everything before I told you. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to protect you, and You protected me," he interrupted, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. "You're protecting me right now. Emily, my sweet girl, you've been dealing with this alone?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He stood up, came around the table, and pulled me into a hug. I finally let myself cry, soaking his shoulder with tears I'd been holding back for 2 weeks. "We're going to handle this," he said firmly, "together. They don't get to do this to us and walk away clean." When Linda arrived an hour later, letting herself in with her key like she owned the place, she found us sitting at the dining table, documents spread out, laptop open, Dad's face a mask of stone, Robert, Emily, I'm so glad you're both here early. I wanted to. She stopped when she saw our expressions. Sit down, Linda, Dad said. His voice was nothing like I'd ever heard before. Cold, hard, unforgiving. What's going on? She glanced between us, and I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was already trying to figure out how much we knew, already preparing her defense. Sit down. She sat. Dad pressed play on the laptop. Linda's own voice filled the kitchen. She's too sweet, too concerned about everyone else's feelings. That's always been her problem. She'll suffer in silence to protect her daddy. The color drained from her face. Robert, I can explain. Explain what? Dad's voice cracked like a whip. Explain how you've been sleeping with my daughter's husband. Explain how you've been lying to me for 4 months. Explain how you convinced me to invest my life savings with a man who was committing fraud while he was fucking my wife? Linda flinched. I'd never heard my father use that word. It's not like that, she said, recovering quickly, shifting tactics. Robert, you have to understand. We didn't mean for this to happen. Michael and I, we connected in a way that... You connected with my daughter's husband. These things happen. People fall in love. You can't control. You seduced him, I said quietly. Both of them turned to look at me. You deliberately pursued a relationship with my husband. The recordings make that clear. You initiated contact. You suggested the affair. You planned the meetings. Linda's eyes narrowed. You recorded us? Every conversation, every phone call, every text message Michael was stupid enough not to delete. I opened the folder and slid printouts across the table. Screenshots of text messages, transcripts of calls. It's all here, including the parts where you both laugh about how naive I am, how weak, how pathetic. Emily, sweetie, don't call me that. Don't ever call me that again. The front door opened. Michael's voice echoed from the foyer. Robert, Linda, sorry I'm late. Traffic was... He appeared in the kitchen doorway and froze. The tableau must have looked damning. Linda, pale and shaken. Dad, rigid with fury. Me, calm and collected with evidence spread before me like a prosecutor's case file. What's going on? Michael asked, but his voice betrayed him. He already knew. Sit down, Michael, I said. Emily, I said sit down. He sat. I let the silence stretch, watching them both squirm. Michael's eyes darted between Linda and me. Linda stared at the table. Dad looked like he was carved from granite. I filed for divorce, I said calmly. The papers will be served tomorrow. I'm taking the house. It was purchased with my inheritance as the down payment, which my lawyer has documented. I'm taking my car, my belongings, and my dignity. You, Michael, are getting nothing. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Adultery is still grounds for fault divorce in this state, and I have overwhelming evidence. But that's not even the interesting part. I pulled out another document. This is a complaint I'm filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission regarding your fraudulent investment practices, specifically how you've been falsifying returns, hiding losses, and defrauding investors, including my father, who trusted you with $300,000. Michael's face went white. Emily, you don't understand the business. I had a forensic accountant review everything. He understands the business perfectly. So will the SEC. So will the police when I file a criminal complaint for fraud. You're going to destroy my career over a mistake. Emily, please, we can work this out. A mistake? The word came out like a slap. You've been fucking my stepmother for 4 months. You've been stealing from my father for 6. Those aren't mistakes, Michael. Those are choices. Deliberate, calculated choices. Linda finally found her voice. Robert, please, you have to listen. Get out of my house. Dad's words were quiet but absolute. This is my home too. We're married. Not for long. I'm filing for divorce as well. And unlike Emily, who married a man with nothing, I married a woman who signed a prenuptial agreement. You'll get exactly what you came into this marriage with. Which, if I recall correctly, was a leased BMW and a closet full of designer clothes you couldn't really afford. You bastard! Get out of my house, now, before I do something I'll regret. Linda looked at Michael, silently begging him to defend her, to say something. But Michael was staring at the documents spread across the table, his career and freedom evaporating before his eyes. "This is insane," Linda said, standing abruptly. "You're both being crazy. We're adults. These things happen. You can't just—" "We can," I said. "And we are. You have until tomorrow morning to remove your personal belongings from Dad's house. Anything left behind will be donated. You're no longer welcome here." "Robert, please!" But Dad had already turned away, staring out the kitchen window at the garden Linda had insisted on planting. The roses she'd chosen, the stone path she'd designed. Linda looked at me one last time. I saw anger there, yes, but also something else. Disbelief. She truly thought I was too weak to fight back, too sweet to seek revenge, too concerned with keeping the peace to burn it all down. She'd been wrong. "Come on," Michael said to her, his voice defeated. "Let's go." They left together. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and then it was just Dad and me in the kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of our families. Dad turned back from the window. "I married her 3 years ago," he said quietly. 3 years! And the whole time, was she ever really mine? Or was I just another mark? I didn't have an answer for that. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, police statements, and cold, hard reality. The divorce papers were served. Michael tried to contest them, hired an expensive lawyer, threatened to drag it out. But when my lawyer presented the evidence, the recordings, the text messages, the financial fraud documentation, his lawyer advised him to settle quickly and quietly. Michael agreed to give me everything I asked for. He didn't have much choice. The SEC investigation moved faster than I had expected. Turns out Michael had been sloppy, and once they started digging, they found a trail of fraudulent activity going back 3 years. Multiple investors had been defrauded. My father wasn't the only victim, just the one closest to home. Criminal charges were filed. Fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud. The list went on. Michael's firm fired him immediately. His assets were frozen. His face appeared on the local news. Reporters camped outside his apartment. He'd moved in with Linda, of course, the two of them clinging to each other in the wreckage they'd created. Dad's divorce was simpler. The prenup was ironclad. Linda got nothing, just as Dad had promised. She tried to fight it, claimed emotional distress, tried to paint herself as the victim, but the recordings I'd provided made that impossible. The judge looked at her with barely concealed disgust when the evidence was presented. "Mrs. Chen," the judge had said, "you engaged in an extramarital affair with your stepdaughter's husband, deceived your own husband, and participated in covering up financial fraud. You have no grounds for claiming victimhood here. This divorce is granted on the grounds of adultery. You are awarded nothing." Linda walked out of that courtroom with her head high, designer heels clicking on the tile floor. But I saw the defeat in her shoulders. But here's the thing about revenge. It's supposed to feel good. Victorious, triumphant. It didn't. 6 weeks after everything fell apart, I sat in my house now completely surrounded by boxes of Michael's things I needed to dispose of. Photos from our wedding, books he'd loved, the coffee maker he'd bought that made him so particular about his morning routine. I'd won, they'd lost. Justice had been served. So why did I feel so empty? My phone rang. Dad. "Hey, sweetheart, want to come over for dinner? I'm making that beef stew you like." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Dad's house felt different now. Quieter. Linda had taken all her decorations, her throw pillows, her scented candles. The space felt masculine again. Sparse but comfortable. More like the home I'd grown up in. We ate dinner in silence for a while, both of us picking at our food. "I've been thinking," Dad finally said, "about selling this place. Too many memories." "Where would you go?" "Maybe somewhere smaller, a condo near the waterfront." I always liked the water. He paused. "What about you? Are you going to stay in your house?" I've been asking myself the same question. I don't know, it's a good house, but every room has memories of him. Of them. We're a pair, aren't we? Dad smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Two people who loved the wrong people and paid the price, architected narrative resolution, balancing consequences, healing and character closure. I need to continue building toward a resolution. The story needs to show Emily and her father healing, but also show the consequences for Michael and Linda. I should explore the emotional aftermath more deeply, showing that revenge isn't as satisfying as expected, but that justice was still necessary. I'm at about 6,500 words now, so I need another 3,250 words to reach the target of 9,650. I should include the actual consequences for Michael and Linda Emily's healing process, a final confrontation or moment of closure, the resolution showing Emily moving forward, perhaps a time jump showing where everyone ended up. Let me continue. We didn't love the wrong people, I said. We loved the right people who became the wrong people. Or maybe they were always wrong, and we just couldn't see it. Dad nodded slowly. Linda used to say she loved me. She'd look me in the eyes and say those words. Was she lying every single time? Or did she mean it once and something changed? Does it matter? I suppose not. The end result is the same. He pushed his stew around his bowl. I keep thinking about that phrase, till death do us part. But it wasn't death that parted us. It was choice, their choice to betray us. We sat with that for a moment. The trial date is set, I said. Michael's, I mean. 3 months from now. Will you go? I have to. I'm testifying about the financial fraud. I took a breath. They want me to testify about the affair too, for character evidence. Will you? Yes. Every word of those recordings, every lie, every moment they thought I was too weak to fight back. I met his eyes. Is that wrong? Wanting them to face what they did publicly? Dad reached across the table and took my hand. It's not wrong. It's justice. There's a difference between revenge and accountability. Revenge is hurting them because we're hurt. Accountability is making sure they face the consequences of their actions. It feels like revenge sometimes. Maybe it is. A little. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we're allowed to want justice and to feel satisfaction when we get it. The story went viral 3 weeks before the trial. I don't know who leaked it to the press, probably someone at the courthouse or the SEC, but suddenly our private tragedy was public entertainment. Finance exec accused of fraud while carrying on affair with wives. Stepmother, read the headline in the local paper. By the next day, it had gone national. My phone exploded with messages, old friends I hadn't heard from in years, co-workers expressing shock and sympathy, strangers sending messages of support through social media. But also, reporters. So many reporters. They camped outside my house, outside the library, outside my father's home. They wanted interviews, wanted the exclusive story, wanted me to cry on camera and talk about my pain. I refused every single one. Michael and Linda weren't so circumspect. Linda gave an interview to a women's magazine, painting herself as a victim of overwhelming passion and a marriage that had died years ago. She talked about how she and Michael were soulmates, who'd found each other against all odds. She didn't mention that her soulmate was her stepdaughter's husband. The magazine's editorial team added that detail in the headline. Michael's interview was worse. He went on a podcast, one of those true crime-adjacent shows that thrives on scandal, and tried to explain his actions. I'm not proud of what I did, he said, his voice dripping with practiced remorse. But Emily and I had grown apart. We were more like roommates than spouses. When Linda and I connected, it felt like coming home, like finding the person I was supposed to be with all along. The podcast host, to her credit, asked, "But wasn't that person your wife's stepmother?" "Love doesn't follow rules," Michael had responded. "The heart wants what it wants." I listened to that podcast once, just once, and then I called Patricia. "Can we use that?" I asked. "In the trial?" "Oh, absolutely," she said. I could hear the smile in her voice. "A confession of the affair on a public platform, that's a gift. Your ex-husband is an idiot." "I know," I said. "I married him." The trial began on a gray Tuesday morning in March. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, cameras, curious onlookers who'd followed the story. I walked past them all, head high, wearing a navy suit Patricia had helped me pick out. Professional, composed, unbreakable. Inside the courtroom, I saw him for the first time in months. Michael looked thinner, older. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he'd aged badly under the stress. He glanced at me once, then quickly looked away. Linda was in the gallery, sitting 3 rows back. She wore red, always dramatic, and her hair was different, shorter, sharper. When our eyes met, she lifted her chin defiantly. I looked away first. She wasn't worth my attention anymore. The prosecution's case was devastating. They had documents, testimony from other defrauded investors, expert witnesses explaining how Michael had manipulated accounts and fabricated returns. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with steady steps. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Hayes, who reminded me of Patricia, was gentle but thorough. Ms. Chen, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? He was my husband. We were married for 6 years. And during that marriage, were you aware of his business practices? No. He handled all financial matters. I trusted him. Did you trust him in other areas of your life as well? Yes, completely. Can you tell the court what you discovered on February 14th of this year? I took a breath, told the story, the text from my father, coming home early, opening the bedroom door, finding Michael with Linda. I didn't cry. I kept my voice steady. I stated facts. When I mentioned Linda, I saw Michael flinch. The jury noticed too. And Ms. Chen, the woman you discovered with your husband, can you clarify for the court who she was? Linda Chen, my stepmother, my father's wife. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The jury members exchanged glances. Even though they'd heard it before, hearing it stated so plainly, so calmly, seemed to strike them differently. How did you respond to this discovery? I gathered evidence, I documented the affair, and then I discovered the financial fraud. Can you explain how you discovered the fraud? I explained about the recordings, about hearing Michael discuss hiding losses and creative accounting, about bringing that information to lawyers and accountants who uncovered the full scope of his crimes. Ms. Chen, did your husband ever attempt to defraud you personally? Yes. He forged my signature on several investment documents, making me liable for losses I knew nothing about. He also tried to hide marital assets during our divorce proceedings. The defense attorney tried to rattle me during cross-examination, suggesting I'd manufactured evidence out of spite, that my recordings were taken without consent, that I was a scorned woman seeking revenge. I met his eyes calmly. I am a scorned woman, I said, but that doesn't make the evidence less real. My husband committed fraud. He stole money from my father and numerous other investors. He fabricated returns and hid losses. Those are facts regardless of my personal feelings. But you do have personal feelings about this, don't you? You're angry. Of course I'm angry. He betrayed me in every possible way. But my anger doesn't change the numbers in those account statements. It doesn't change the forged documents. It doesn't change the fact that he broke the law. The defense attorney tried a few more angles, but I held firm. Patricia had prepared me well. When I stepped down from the stand, I felt lighter. I'd told my truth. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. My father testified the next day. Watching him on that stand broke something in me that I'd been holding together. He explained how he'd trusted Michael, how Linda had encouraged him to invest everything with her new son-in-law, how he'd believed the returns were real because why would family lie? I worked my entire life, Dad said, his voice cracking. 60 years old, and I thought I finally had security. I thought I could retire, maybe travel a little, see the world with my wife. And what do you have now, Mr. Chen? The prosecutor asked gently. Half of what I started with. And no wife. She's with the man who stole from me. Michael looked down at the defense table. Linda, in the gallery, had tears running down her face. But I didn't know if she was crying for Dad or for herself. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Expert testimony, document analysis, character witnesses. The prosecution built a wall of evidence that the defense couldn't scale. When the jury went to deliberate, Patricia and I sat in the courthouse cafeteria, drinking bad coffee. How do you feel? She asked. Numb, I admitted. I thought I'd feel victorious or satisfied or something, but I just feel tired. That's normal. Betrayal doesn't just hurt in the moment, it's an ongoing wound. The trial is closure, but it's not healing. That comes later. How much later? She smiled sadly. That's different for everyone. But Emily, I want you to know something. You're one of the strongest people I've ever represented. Most people in your position would have fallen apart. You fought back, you protected your father, you held your ground. That takes incredible courage. I didn't have a choice. You did. You could have stayed quiet, suffered in silence like Linda said you would, but you didn't. You chose to fight. The jury came back after 2 days of deliberation, guilty on all counts. Michael showed no emotion when the verdict was read. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, as the judge thanked the jury and set a sentencing date. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave no statement, just walked to my car and drove home. Linda called that night. I don't know how she got my new number. I'd changed it after the divorce, but her name appeared on my screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. What do you want, Linda? Emily. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. Please, I need to talk to you. You had your chance to talk. 4 months ago, when you were sleeping with my husband, you could have talked. Now we have nothing to say to each other. Please, just listen. I know you hate me. You have every right to hate me. But Emily, they're going to send him to prison. Real prison. For years. Good. He didn't mean for any of this to happen. The affair, yes, that was wrong. But the financial stuff, he was trying to steal money. He succeeded. Now he's going to pay for it. You don't understand the pressure he was under. Linda, I don't care. I don't care about his pressure or his excuses or his regrets. He made choices. You both did. Now you both live with the consequences. I loved you like a daughter. The words hit me like a physical blow. No, you didn't. If you'd loved me, you wouldn't have destroyed my marriage. You wouldn't have betrayed my father. You wouldn't have helped Michael steal from him. You loved yourself. That's all you've ever loved. Silence on the other end, then. I hope someday you can forgive me. I won't, I said calmly. Forgiveness is for people who are sorry. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. I hung up, blocked the number, and that was the last time I spoke to Linda Chen. Michael's sentencing was set for 2 months after the verdict. The judge gave him the maximum, 15 years for fraud, embezzlement, and wire fraud, to be served consecutively. I wasn't there. I'd said my piece during the trial. I didn't need to see him led away in handcuffs to know that justice had been served. But Dad went, and afterward he came to my house, sat at my kitchen table, and told me about it. He tried to give a statement, Dad said. Before sentencing, he apologized to the victims, said he was ashamed of his actions, that he'd lost his way. Did he apologize to you specifically? No, he didn't even look at me. We sat in silence for a while. Is it wrong that I don't feel bad for him? I asked. No, sweetheart, it's not wrong. He earned every day of that sentence. What about Linda? Have you heard from her? Dad shook his head. She moved, left town about a week after the verdict. I heard through a friend that she went to Arizona, started using her maiden name again. Running away. Can you blame her? Everyone in this town knows what she did. She can't show her face anywhere without judgment. She should have thought about that before she started sleeping with my husband. Dad smiled grimly. Yes, she should have. Time, they say, heals all wounds. I'm not sure that's true. I think time just makes the wounds less raw, less immediate. You learn to live with the scars. 6 months after the trial, I started therapy. A recommendation from Patricia, who said she'd never seen a client who didn't need it after a case like mine. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Morrison, helped me understand that what I was feeling, the emptiness, the exhaustion, the lack of satisfaction, even in victory, was normal. You've been running on adrenaline for almost a year, she explained. Fight or flight constantly activated. Now that the threat is over, your body is crashing. You're processing trauma that you didn't have time to process while you were gathering evidence and preparing for trial. So when does it get better? It already is better. You just can't see it yet because you're in the middle of it. But Emily, think about where you were a year ago versus where you are now. You've reclaimed your life. You've protected your father. You've held two people accountable for terrible actions. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough because revenge never feels like enough. That's why it's important to separate revenge from healing. Revenge is external, making them pay. Healing is internal, making yourself whole again. You've accomplished the first. Now we work on the second. I started dating again exactly 1 year after I caught Michael and Linda. Not seriously, just coffee dates, dinners, the occasional movie, testing the waters, remembering what it felt like to be seen by someone who didn't know my story, who didn't look at me with pity. His name was Daniel, and he was a high school teacher. We met at a bookstore, appropriately enough for a librarian, both reaching for the same novel at the same time. He asked me to coffee. I said yes. On our 3rd date, he asked about my past relationships. I told him the truth, all of it, the affair, the fraud, the trial. I figured he'd hear about it eventually. A quick Google search of my name brought up dozens of articles, so better to control the narrative. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot," he finally said. "It is. And I understand if it's too much. If you want to run screaming in the other direction, I won't blame you." He smiled. "I'm not running. I'm just processing. Emily, what you went through, what you did, that takes incredible strength. You didn't just survive betrayal, you fought back. You protected the people you loved. That's not baggage. That's character." I felt something loosen in my chest, something I didn't even know was tight. "I'm not completely whole yet," I admitted. "I'm still figuring out how to trust again, how to be vulnerable without being afraid." "That's okay. We can figure it out together if you want to." I did want to. And that realization that I was ready to want something again, to hope again, felt like the first real step toward healing. Dad sold his house and bought a condo on the waterfront, just like he'd planned. He started taking photography classes, something he'd always wanted to do, but never had time for when he was running the restaurant. We had dinner together every Sunday, a new tradition, just the two of us. No Linda, no Michael, no betrayal hanging over the table like a ghost. One Sunday, about 18 months after everything fell apart, Dad showed me his latest photos. Sunsets over the water, boats in the harbor, seagulls mid-flight. "These are beautiful, Dad." "I've been thinking about entering a competition. Just a local one, nothing fancy." "You should. These are really good." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it reached his eyes. "I've also been thinking about other things." "Like what?" "Like maybe starting to date again." I looked up from the photos. "Yeah?" "There's a woman in my photography class, Margaret. She's kind, funny, loves the same terrible action movies I do. We've been talking about maybe getting dinner sometime." "That's great, Dad. You don't think it's too soon? It's been a year and a half, and Dad, you deserve to be happy. Linda took a lot from you, but she doesn't get to take your future too." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "The same goes for you, you know. Michael doesn't get to define the rest of your life." "I know, I'm working on it." "How are things with Daniel?" "Good. Really good, actually. We're taking it slow, but I think I'm ready to let someone in again." "I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Not just for how you handled everything with Michael and Linda, but for how you're handling the aftermath, for choosing to heal instead of staying bitter." "I'm still bitter sometimes," I admitted. "I still have moments where I think about what they did, and I get angry all over again." "That's normal. They hurt you, hurt us. We're allowed to be angry about that, but we don't have to let that anger consume us." 2 years after the trial, I ran into an old friend from college. We got coffee, caught up on life. She asked about Michael. "He's in prison," I said simply. "Serving 15 years for fraud." Her eyes widened. "I heard something about that, but I thought it was just rumors. My God, Emily, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. He earned it." "Still, it must have been awful for you." "It was, but I'm okay now. Better than okay, actually." And I realized, saying those words out loud, that they were true. I was okay. Better than okay. I'd lost a husband who didn't deserve me. I'd lost a stepmother who'd never really loved me. I'd lost years of my life to people who saw me as weak, as useful, as someone to be manipulated. But I'd gained something too. I'd gained the knowledge that I was stronger than I ever knew, that I could face betrayal and not just survive it, but fight back, that I could protect the people I loved, even when it meant burning my own life down to do it. I'd gained a relationship with my father that was deeper and more honest than it had ever been. We'd been through hell together, and we'd come out the other side. And I'd gained the understanding that love, real love, isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. It's about honesty and trust and mutual respect. Michael and Linda had taught me what love wasn't. Daniel and my father were teaching me what it was. 3 years after catching Michael and Linda in bed, I got a letter. It was forwarded through my lawyer. Michael had figured out he couldn't contact me directly, and Patricia called to ask if I wanted her to open it or just shred it. "What do you think it says?" I asked. "Probably an apology, maybe an explanation. Prisoners get a lot of time to think. Sometimes they develop actual remorse. And sometimes they just want to make themselves feel better by apologizing to their victims." Also true. I thought about it for a long moment. Shred it. You don't want to know what he has to say. No, because nothing he says will change what happened, and nothing he says will change how I feel about it. He's part of my past, Patricia. I'm not interested in giving him any space in my present. Fair enough. Consider it shredded. I never opened that letter, never read whatever justifications or apologies or excuses Michael had written. Because the truth is, I didn't need his words to move on. I'd already moved on. I'd moved on when I chose to fight instead of flee. I'd moved on when I protected my father instead of hiding in shame. I'd moved on when I told the truth in that courtroom, head high, voice steady. I'd moved on when I started therapy, started dating, started believing in love again. I'd moved on when I forgave myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for trusting people who didn't deserve it, for being too sweet and too concerned with everyone else's feelings. Because here's what Linda got wrong. Being kind isn't weak. Being empathetic isn't stupid. Caring about other people's feelings doesn't make you a doormat. It makes you human. What made me strong wasn't becoming hard and cynical and closed off. What made me strong was staying open, staying kind, and still choosing to fight when I needed to. 5 years after everything fell apart, Dad married Margaret. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. She wore blue, he wore his best suit, and I stood beside him as his best woman, watching him promise forever to someone who actually deserved him. Daniel was there too. We'd been together for 3 years by then, living together for 1. He'd met Michael exactly once. A chance encounter at a coffee shop while Michael was out on a day release for good behavior. Michael had approached us, started to say something, but Daniel had simply taken my hand and said, "I don't think we have anything to discuss." We'd walked away. And that was that. At the wedding reception, Dad pulled me aside. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being brave enough to tell me the truth, for fighting for us, for not letting them get away with it. You would have done the same for me." "Maybe, but I'll never know, because you got there first." He hugged me tight. "You saved us both, Emily. Don't ever forget that." I think about that afternoon sometimes, standing in that bedroom doorway, phone in hand, looking at my husband and my stepmother tangled together in expensive sheets. I think about how I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't break. I think about the choice I made in that moment. Not the choice to forgive, not the choice to fall apart, but the choice to fight. And I realize now that it wasn't really about revenge. It was never about revenge. It was about refusing to be a victim. It was about standing up and saying, "You don't get to do this to me," and walk away clean. It was about justice, about accountability, about protecting my father from people who saw him as nothing more than a bank account and a convenient cover story. It was about reclaiming my power from people who'd taken it without permission. Michael is still in prison. He's served 5 years, has at least 7 more to go. I hear updates occasionally through mutual acquaintances, through news stories about parole hearings he's been denied. Linda is in Arizona, last I heard, still using her maiden name, still running from her past. And me? I'm here, in my house, no ghosts, no memories of betrayal, just a home I've made my own, filled with books and laughter and Sunday dinners with people who actually love me. I'm here with a partner who sees my strength and my scars and loves me anyway. I'm here with a father who's finally happy, finally at peace. I'm here and I'm whole. Not because I destroyed the people who hurt me, not because I got revenge, but because I chose to survive, and then I chose to heal. And in the end, that's the best revenge of all, living well, loving deeply, and refusing to let their betrayal define my story. They were a chapter, an awful, painful chapter. But the book is mine, and I'm writing the rest of it exactly the way I want to.